If you've ever wondered what it's like working in animation, it's basically like telling a joke to all of your friends and then having to wait 2 years to see if anyone's gonna laugh at it. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sia. I'm a storyboard artist working in animation, and I worked on the King of the Hill revival that just dropped on Hulu today. So I'll be breaking down some of the episodes that I storyboarded. If you're an artist yourself, hopefully this video is helpful to you. Maybe you want to work in animation, maybe you don't. Unfortunately, I can't share any of my storyboards from the show yet because as of the filming of this video, which is August 4th, I don't yet have permission from the studio to do that. And I really don't feel like getting sued by the big mouse today, so I'm not gonna risk it. However, the final animation, from what I can tell, is pretty damn close to what I had turned in for my storyboards. So I can still talk about it, my thought process behind some of these scenes, and some of the creative choices that I made. If you're from Hulu or Disney and you're watching this, I promise I did not put my actual boards in the thumbnail. That's just a scribble I did just for YouTube, so please don't come for me. I do want to explain what a storyboard artist is for people that don't know. Basically, a storyboard artist is responsible for creating a visual blueprint of what the final product is going to look like. And we do that by drawing storyboards, which are basically comic book style panels that you can click through one by one. So we're responsible for things like the composition of the shot that you see, how the characters are acting, the overall story, sometimes depending on what sort of project you're working on. On a show like King of the Hill, it's script driven, which means that I was just given a screenplay from the writing team and my job was to visualize it exactly how they had it written out. So I'm not responsible for any of the writing or even any of the jokes. This is not going to be a review. You can watch Johnny Two Cellos for that. This is not really going to be a reaction video. It's more of an artistic behind the scenes breakdown of some of the scenes, just the ones I worked on. Okay, now that all the disclaimers are out of the way, let's dive in. I'm gonna start with some scenes from Chore Money, Chore Problems, because that's the first episode that I ever worked on with this show. The scene with Hank and Boomhauer is the first scene I ever storyboarded on this show, which was a little over 2 years ago. I worked on this in June of 2023, and we're in August 2025, so you can see how long the animation process really takes. Big shout out to my director Kyungi and my AD, my assistant director Alan, for being super patient with me and showing me the ropes on how to actually board for a show like this, because it was a bit of a steep learning curve for me. I am happy to see that the first two shots of this sequence are what I had in mind for it. This wide shot of a house with like the hammer in the background, and then a close-up of Hank hammering a nail in.
I'm gonna give you 5 bananas for sure.
Well, thank you, but I hate bananas. It's monkey food.
When I worked on this, Hank's line was something like, "Oh, thank you, but I already had a pretty big breakfast." So I'm so glad they changed it. It's so much funnier now. I'm having flashbacks because this sequence, I think I spent 3 weeks on it, and you're not supposed to spend 3 weeks on any one singular sequence, like ever. I love the backgrounds in our show. Our design team is so talented.
Was there something about my service that you found unsatisfactory?
2 out of 5 is good.
Something really interesting about King of the Hill specifically is that working on it, I had to break a lot of the rules that I had been taught about animation beforehand. Because animation is all about strong silhouettes and having clear poses and exaggeration and just making sure everything like looks lively. So for a scene like this guy, I forget his name, and Hank barely move the whole time. All of the acting is in the face and just the subtle eyebrow movements, eyelid squinting. Maybe they'll shift on their feet just a little bit, but this guy pretty much stays on the same spot on screen the whole time. But he's a little bit anxious, so I had him glance away just a little bit and then make eye contact with Hank. I really loved working on this scene. I love doing close-up shots and like really getting in the character's head. It was a bit tricky, this being my first episode, figuring out how Hank's gonna deliver this line in his Hank way. Like, he's a very restrained guy. So you start with the raised eyebrows, straighter eyebrows, raised eyebrows again. This guy just raises his eyebrows out of curiosity, but he doesn't move.
When I was first born, every night was a new challenge for Peggy and I. He was real.
Animation is very collaborative, so we're, constantly reiterating and building on each other's work. I did storyboard this scene, but this little pause was not there when I boarded it. I don't know what phase this was added in, because once I turn in my assignment, like I move on to the next thing, I have no idea what happens to anything that I turn in. But it's a really nice pause for them to just like react. Same with Hank. I love how his face softens a little bit. I don't think I boarded this. I'm pretty sure there wasn't like a pause in it when I did this scene, but I love it. I think the last scene that I did for this episode, I was finally starting to kind of get the hang of Hank and get over my learning curve a little bit. Something that I really loved doing was being really specific in how Hank does certain everyday things. Every single one of my older relatives, if they have to like check their phone for something, they always have to like sit up straight, grab their phone, grab their glasses, like adjust them, and like look at their phone from like 2 feet away. I don't know what it is. So for Hank, I made sure to have him adjust his glasses and read his phone from like a foot away. Moving on to Bobby Gets Grilled. This sequence is basically Bobby on the phone with Hank talking about him visiting his restaurant in Dallas. And over the course of the conversation, Bobby gets increasingly more and more anxious because he uses charcoal to grill in his restaurant when he told his dad he uses propane. So, you know, what looks like a normal conversation, like on the script or just like reading the dialogue out loud, you still have to be able to interpret that subtext of like, oh, Bobby's gonna be a bit nervous by the end of it. So I made sure to include some of that in the sequence. And I also wanted to make sure that Emilio is in the corner, just, you know, eavesdropping, keeping an eye on Bobby the whole time. So we've got that down shot to make Bobby feel inferior. And the box of charcoal is right there, of course. It's the star of the show. Can't forget that.
My dad loves 4 things in life.
It makes me so happy that the final animation has all of the hand gestures that I drew on Bobby. It's really important to make these characters feel grounded, but still active at the same time without overacting or exaggerating something, because that's just not the style of this show. So I was like, okay, like, do I have Bobby count on his hands? And if I do that, like, how does he count in a way that, like, feels authentic to his character? Because this is a pretty serious moment for him. Instead of, like, counting and, like, putting fingers down, I just had him, like, bend each finger.
My mom, me.
I love it. I'm
and
so glad they
propane.
kept it. But for propane, he had to, you know, point. So it makes me very happy that they kept all of my acting in the final. This is exactly what I drew. Too bad I can't show you the storyboards.
And when I was a kid, depending on the week, propane would be above me.
Yeah, I was a bit apprehensive about this choice right here, but I guess it works. You know, sometimes I tend to overthink my own acting, but Bobby's like, you know, propane was above me on the list, and it works. I'm glad they kept it. This was the second episode that I boarded on King of the Hill, and between my first episode, Chore Money, Chore Problems, and this one, Bobby Gets Grilled, we had a 3-month hiatus because of the writer's strike. Because we had that, it actually really ended up playing in my favor. I had time to kind of ruminate on my workflow and figure out how I'm gonna approach these characters. So by the time I moved on to my second episode, I was already starting to get a hang of the show and how these characters would act, and it makes me so happy that what I turned in is exactly what you see on screen. This sequence takes place after Hank discovers that Bobby uses charcoal in his restaurant and leaves. So Bobby's obviously frustrated, and this is probably one of the favorite scenes that I've done on the show.
Now is probably not the time to.
It's not.
What with your dad and the whole
I had to draw a lot of hands in this episode. I did the opening sequence as well with the close-up of Miguel chopping seaweed and Sandra also frying the thing. So when it came to this shot, I was like, I don't feel like drawing Bobby's hands again, so I just cropped it right above his wrist because I just did not want to deal with drawing more hands. At this point in the show, this is about Emilio and Bobby's relationship. And this also allows you to keep all of your focus on this part, just between their two faces. Something else that I recommend when it comes to acting for storyboards, I never have the character move their entire body all at once. So first, he looks up instead of looking down, and you can see his arm moving to put his knife away. Pauses, side-eyes Emilio, and then he turns. I love when characters put things away in cartoon space. Is there a surface on the side where Emilio put the box down? I have no idea, but he did it anyway.
And he recommended another charcoal supplier.
Well, why didn't you start with that?
Storyboarding is all about anticipating and solving visual problems. When I was working on this scene, the script that I was given, it's just straight dialogue, just Bobby and Emilio talking. It did not say Emilio pulls a post-it out of the clipboard. Bobby has to grab the post-it. That was all me. All of these props, like the clipboard, post-it, it gives the characters something to do. And as the audience, it gives your eyes something to look at. If Emilio and Bobby both were just like standing with their arms down, it would get really boring really fast. And you know, Emilio's kind of his right hand man, so he's always prepared. He always knows what it is that Bobby needs. I also wanted to show Bobby dialing the number himself because I didn't think that Emilio would just show up with his phone, like the number ready to go. That doesn't feel that natural to me. Because Bobby's the boss, right? Like he's gonna be like, all right, do you want to call this guy or not? If you do, here's a number. But all of that is left unspoken because they have such a close working relationship.
22-pound bags, maybe a mix of 2/3 Kirimaru and
Same logic with the clipboard right here. I wanted to show how Emilio and Bobby are always in sync. And Bobby's got a lot on his mind. He just had an argument with his dad over charcoal and he's in a bad mood. Like he might not exactly remember what exact type of charcoal he has to order from this guy. So I figured Emilio has the clipboard, he's gonna be prepared with that information. This was just dialogue when it was assigned to me, and I figured, how do I make it work visually and also show the relationship at the same time? Because if I didn't, it would kind of just be like, how would Bobby know off the top of his head what exact type of charcoal it was? As a business owner, I feel like he would need to have that written down as a reminder somewhere. I remember going into the kitchen at the office in Burbank, and I would grab an empty cardboard box and a clipboard from the kitchen and try to just figure out how to hold them both at the same time in my cubicle. Figuring out the physicality of these characters and how they behave is really important.
Kirimaru and 1/3 Kawari.
No.
Sorry.
This is my favorite part. There's no line in the script that says, Bobby looks at Emilio with an incredulous look on his face. But it felt very natural, like a brief look of like, are you seeing this shit right now? Like, what is happening? So it's just a very subtle glance and a raised eyebrow. And then he looks back down at the phone. I wanted to make sure that it would be silent too. Like, you know, they're on the phone, they're not gonna say anything. But it's just that moment between the two of them, like, what is going on?
It was 2 Italian guys and they threw a soap.
Oh, interesting. When I boarded this, it just opened on this shot of Bobby. I didn't have the close-up of Joseph with his bowl, but it works really well. I'm having flashbacks to how long it took me to figure out how to draw hands with chopsticks. I had to keep a pair of chopsticks at my desk at all times and like pose them out in my hands and take photos of my hands holding them. Because it's not very intuitive, and I wanted to make sure that it looks natural. And there's a lot of scenes in the show where they have chopsticks, like it's a Japanese restaurant, so I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. Because if I didn't, then I would definitely be called out on it. This show is very, very precise in what it needs, and the style and everything. Everything has to be as realistic as possible.
Inoffensive.
Oh, yeah, I feel ya. I mean, I'm the only white dude on my road crew.
I remember reading this line in the script and just dying laughing. It's just so Joseph. And I just had to have a close-up on Joseph for this one to really emphasize the point that he's not a white guy. So that's why the shot before this one is a wide shot of the three of them, just to kind of establish, you know, where they are. They're like on their break, Joseph's eating his lunch, he's just hanging out. But for this line, it was just begging for a close-up. Like there's no other way I could have boarded this one.
As a white dude, one of
I love when a joke is so funny in the script itself. That makes my job so easy, you guys. Like, I don't have to try to make it funny. It's already funny because of the writing, and all I have to do is execute it. A lot of times as a storyboard artist, you'll be on a show where that's not the case. You'll be given a script that's kind of vague or doesn't make sense, and you have to make it funny and make it entertaining, and it can be very daunting. But for this one, I was like, I know exactly what to do. At first, when I was gonna board this, I was thinking more of a pose where Bobby's kind of just like looking straight, like incredulous. He feels Amelia moving and he just like waves his hand kind of like that. But my assistant director Brian was like, no, just have him be like, just have like this motion with like one finger up. And it works way better. So I'm really glad we went with that direction. Yeah, some of the movement is so subtle in this show. Not even redrawing anything. I just had to take his face and just move it just a little bit to the side.
problems is I have no freaking clue what to wear on Halloween.
It's been almost 2 years since I worked on this episode, so I'm having a hard time kind of remembering my thought process. I'm trying to remember like what my reasoning was for having Joseph walk from one side of the kitchen to the other instead of just having him stay in the same spot. And I think I just wanted to introduce some movement because they've been standing in one spot this whole time so far. It also had the side effect of making Joseph look like he's very comfortable in this environment. Like he has been here plenty of times, he knows what he's doing, he knows where he's going, he feels very comfortable where he is.
Speedy Gonzalez racist? He's a hero. He fought the good fight against American imperialism.
I love all these little moments in the
You
final
know.
animation where they've like added in those awkward pauses. The way that I boarded it, we were gonna stay on this shot as he delivers the entire line. And then he was just supposed to pause and be like, what? Like, why are you guys giving me that face? Like, what's going on? And then you cut to them with their confused faces. And then they have a moment where Amelia's explaining what he meant and they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So it was just gonna be 2 shots. But I love these little awkward pregnant pauses they've added where it's just like, what are you saying, dude?
Our last box of charcoal. What do you want to do?
I don't know.
Pamela Adlon always does such a fantastic job with Bobby. Because so far in this episode, like, Bobby's held it together. But now he's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, that's why I had him, like, slap his own forehead. Like, this is a fairly extreme pose. Like, you don't do that unless you're, like, really, really frustrated. But that's how the dialogue sounded, and all I had to do was match that. If you're enjoying this video so far, go ahead and join my Discord, and also check out my ADHD Coaching for Artists program. I did a handful of storyboard revisions in the first 2 episodes as well. Storyboard revisions basically means that I get someone else's storyboards and I just have to address any changes that the studio asked for or the director asked for. So I'm not coming up with the storyboards from scratch. I'm just, doing whatever needs to be done after the storyboard artist has already moved on to the next episode. So I did a little bit of work on the beer episode. Not this scene though. I wish I worked on this scene. When I was working on the show, anytime we got final animation back from our vendor studio in Korea, we would have crew screenings. The room erupted with laughter at this exact moment. And I just knew it was gonna be a hit, like, when the show actually comes out. I wish I knew who storyboarded this though. I would love to give them credit. I did a very small amount of revisions on this episode, and one of them was adding this shot of these 2 guys laughing. And it was a little bit tricky because they're not really doing much. They're just being, douchey frat bros and whatnot. However, something that I see a lot of artists neglecting is when you have 2 different characters in the same scene and they're doing the same thing, like they're laughing, whatnot, like they're having the exact same reaction, right? A lot of artists tend to neglect including some sort of contrast between the 2 because they don't think it's important. But I was very intentional about making sure there's at least like some contrast in just their silhouettes and how they're standing. Like this guy can barely hold it together, like he has his mouth covered with his hand. And this guy does not care, like he's like leaning forward and like yelling the whole time. Basically at, diagonals with each other visually, and really enjoyed adding this a little bit, and I'm so glad they kept it in the final animation. All right, I'm about to move on to episode 10, which is the season finale. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want spoilers, you can tap out now. This sequence with Buck was so much fun for me to work on. Unfortunately, I didn't get to finish it because I got sick with the flu halfway through my time on this episode. The final animation is quite different from what I had. Originally, I had him lying on the floor and doing some stretches, but I'm really glad it opens on him like covering his face with the brochure, so there's like a slight reveal for the audience as to who it is. I remember looking at the script and being like, how am I gonna draw all of these hogs? But we figured out a lot of ways to cheat it so we're not like drawing all of these animals from all these angles and making it really complicated. My entire Google search history was just hogs for the 6 weeks that I worked on this episode. So this is the only scene where they're, walking in and you see their feet and everything. This one's relatively easy because you don't see their feet. You can kind of just like slide them across the shot. You don't have to track their feet frame by frame. The main thing I had to keep in mind with this episode was having a good balance of close-ups and also wide shots. Wide shots are the ones that show the full environment, and they're really important for helping the audience kind of reorient spatially and make sure they know exactly where the characters are standing in space. They don't get confused. So as it turned out, there's a really good balance of both in this scene, and even though we use a lot of close-ups to cheat it a little bit so we don't have to animate as many things, it turned out really nice. We've got that close-up, wider, even wider. I was not about to spend 3 days just drawing trucks, driving in circles in perfect perspective. I asked the design team to send me a 3D model of the truck that they would be driving, and I shamelessly just took screenshots of it and traced over it. I have to take a lot of shortcuts like that in animation sometimes. We don't always have the luxury of time. It's not like being in school or doing some sort of drawing exercise. Like, you have deadlines and you have to meet them, so you gotta take the shortcuts where you can. Okay, that is a wrap on my end. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and I really hope this gave you some insight as to how the animation process actually works. Like I mentioned before, animation is very collaborative and very reiterative. I had the chance to work with an incredibly talented team. Like, so many people came together to build on each other's ideas and execute them to the fullest extent possible. So yeah, go watch King of the Hill season 14. It's on Hulu now. I really want to have a job again, so I would love for it to get a very positive reception so that the studio can renew it for another season. All right, that's it. Bye!